Сьогодні буде все по-англійському. Якщо у вас є питання по-українському, дуже просимо, давайте питання по-українському, коли буде відповідь і питання. Але перша частина буде по-англійському, щоб не повторювати себе. You said something very important, which is close to my heart. Our own. Those words are so emotional. Those words are so close to my heart. If I am being called our own or my own, then some exact appreciation comes from my side towards the entire parish as well. Because also, you are my own parish, and I really need to care about all of you. Today you are going to memorize this evening because of three reasons. Number one, today is the feast day of St. Demetrius. Святого Димитрия сегодня. November the 8th exactly when we celebrated the feast of St. Demetrius. Today we prayed in the morning for this great martyrs of the Orthodox Church. Number two, today also you will go home and you are going to hear about the election. United States is going to be Clinton or Trump. Any kind of station on the way to this place, actually I heard they're talking about the election. Exactly at the end of this presentation, we'll go home and we are hopefully going to know who is the next president of the United States. And number three is exactly because of this reason, because of the book launch. And I am extremely proud and also thankful to the entire Uprava, to the parish of St. Vladimir, for giving me the opportunity to talk to you about this very important work, I would say, in my life, this book. Not too long ago, I received an email from one of the concerned members of our church, who was asking me exactly why this kind of name, the Valley of Hope. And I want to read to you a paragraph from the introduction on page number 8. The aforementioned analysis and presentation are collected and published under the title The Valley of Hope. The title itself is an allegorical expression of the Orthodox Church, particularly in Ukraine, which is being constantly challenged internally and externally by the forces of the contemporary world. The Church never ceases to be a source of hope. The valley for those who are searching for deeper dimensions of life in their local settings. The collection does not intend to be inclusive in its findings, but rather to encourage further research in the field of Orthodox theology. In 2014, I went to Lebanon to one of the conferences organized by the World Council of Churches on behalf of the Canadian Council of Churches. And on the 5th day, they took us to a place called the Valley of Saints. On the way to this place, it's very characteristic, everything was almost yellow, sand, and rocks, until it was kind of like a greenery. And we had to go down. Exactly was a place called the Valley of Saints. A place of remarkable greenery, peace and stillness. And as soon as we entered the caves of those saints from the 12th, 13th centuries, actually there was such a beautiful peace inside. Exactly those places, in those spots, the person can be so much inspired in this world of problems and complexity. Why did I write those articles, or what was the reason for the publication of this book? For the last 20 years, as I have been researching this subject, I realized one thing. We as Ukrainians, we are so poor in the subject of the Ukrainian ecclesiastical literature. I will tell you maybe there's one or two people who are writing about this subject on behalf of the Ukrainian nation. there's almost nobody who is writing about the subject on a scale that could be presentable and also could be comparable to the Moscow Patriarchate. Number two, in year 2000, I was invited to a conference in Leeds, England, and one of the main speakers of this conference was Deacon Alfeyev. Now is the Metropolitan of the External Affairs of the Moscow Patriarchate. Very interesting, at the very end, he was the main guest speaker. And because I was only from Canada, so he didn't know that I'm Ukrainian from Canada. He gave his presentation on the subject of the social issues, document social issues of the Moscow Patriarchate, written in the year 2000. He was so famous and so elaborate in his presentation until there was an open floor. I raised my hand and gave him a very simple question. If this document of social issues of the Moscow Patriarchate describes that every nation in the world has the right to exist, why do the bishop of the Moscow Patriarchate bless the tanks and jets and they are being sent to Chechnya? You would see the reaction of, especially his reaction, because you never expect this kind of question, and reaction of almost 100 people from all over the world: Japan, China, Russia. The answer was quite short. It is a political question, I don't want the answer. Then I was told that he wanted to meet me, but that's good, I never talked to him. But the fact is, whenever there is some kind of conference or international gathering, you may be sure that there's somebody for the Moscow Patriarchate, but there's nobody representing the Ukrainian side. Somehow we don't know how to invite ourselves, or maybe we don't have the ability to speak on behalf of our church. Other thing is very interesting. In the latest conference exactly in Lebanon, also the Moscow Patriarchate was at the very first lines, actually, in the very first place of the document. Although there was only one deacon, and I don't think he spoke English at all, because all the time he was looking and checking his telephone. But the fact that they are sending and representing the Moscow Patriarchate in every possible way. Number three, 2 years ago, our Metropolitan Yuri was invited by the Canadian Council of Churches to Ottawa to give a presentation on the subject of the Maidan. Canadian Council of Churches has at this moment 24 members of different Christians in Canada, 24 members. So all of the representatives and all of the heads, about 100 of us in Ottawa sitting, and Vladimir Yuri gave his presentation. It was very, very good. That's one thing about our Metropolitan, he knows how to talk. But what was very remarkable at the very end was we could give him some kind of literature. There was nothing to give them into the hands, because there was nothing written on the subject. So personally, I was really embarrassed. But from the other side, I was really quite encouraged. If there's nothing written on the subject, why don't you sit down and write? So that's exactly what I was thinking about. I said, well, I have to collect. And this collection is almost only 1/3 of all of the articles I could publish. 1/3 of the most contemporary, most interesting articles of this kind of nature. As you know, there's also this, my English language is not the first language, it is actually my 5th language. But when I asked and approached Sonia Holiat, who was editing my text, I asked her one thing. Pani Sonia, please correct everything what is necessary, but please reserve the style of my writing. Because I was not born in Canada, I was not educated in Canada, but please reserve the way I'm writing. And she did it. She corrected only the essential elements of my writing, but the text and the way I was writing is still preserved, and I'm really extremely thankful to her. As you notice in my book, actually, when I'm going to be following, the book has 14 articles. And one of Zacharias Greg mentioned the first article, the first analysis exactly applies to the autocephaly of the Orthodox Church in Ukraine. Why? For the last 300 years, our Orthodox Church in Ukraine was under the slavery. It was not allowed, not to talk about the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. The Kyiv Patriarchate right now exists, but still is not recognized. That's exactly it's time for us to talk about this subject. Autocephaly is not some kind of liberation. Autocephaly is only a way, a tool for the Ukrainians, for all of us, to be acknowledged that we are one of the nations. We have the right to pray in our own language. We have the right to call ourselves who we want to be called. We have the right to build our churches according to Ukrainian tradition. We have the right to sing Shedeuki, which still they are only learning in Moscow. We have the right to profess what we want to profess. Today, exactly, the Ukrainian nation at this moment, I think we are the most spiritual countries, Orthodox countries in the world. In 2007, I was invited to the conference in Kiev. And at the very end, I had the chance to go to the Viktor Lahoda. It was quite a humbling experience. All those who went there, you know what I mean. You are entering the caves, and slowly in those caves, dark ones, you see the relics of the saints laying and preserved for centuries. Those people exactly who gave us their identity. They were not Russians. They were Ukrainians born and raised in the local Orthodox Church in Ukraine. Some of them actually they were stolen, their relatives were stolen, they are not there. But still we have some saints laying up to this moment in the caves in Kiev. So once again, when I'm talking about autocephaly, I'm talking exactly about the identity. I'm talking about the preservation of who we are in the world. I'm talking about the recognition of our church as one of the recognized Orthodox church in the world. We have to remember one thing. If the Orthodox Church in Ukraine will be recognized as one of the autocephalous Orthodox churches in the world, we are going to be the largest Orthodox church almost in the world. One of the largest ones. With the spirituality, music, and the beautiful churches we have at this moment in Ukraine, we are going to be the dominant strength in the world. That's the reason why the Moscow is not easy to, for them it's not easy for us to release us. Number two, the second article is also quite closely related to the first one. And that is why I connected those two articles almost into one chapter, called the Moscow Patriarchate's Utopian Vision of the Russian Civilization. As you notice lately, especially the last 5 years, Patriarch Kirill is exactly prophesizing, or he's elaborating the theory of so-called Ruski Mir. It's a quite dangerous term. Even lately, actually 2 weeks ago, he was talking about Ruski Mir. Why? Because that's the only one phrase he can use in order to preserve the former borders of the Soviet Union. When we read the documents and what they are talking in those documents is quite amazing. How can they take certain elements of the Orthodox Church and to put it into politics and create their own theory? So I will ask you exactly once again, go to these sources and to exactly see what I'm talking about. And also another footnote before even going to the reading. When you're going to open the book, and especially the articles, you will notice that first part of the book, of the page, is a text. And the second part are the footnotes. What's the reason behind? Number one, because I was educated in Warsaw and I had a really good professor. All of the students actually, they were afraid of him because it's so easy to fail. But when I was defending my thesis, I thanked him. Why? Because he taught us how to write in a proper way. You cannot create a theory. You cannot make a sentence without supporting it. That's the reason why almost every second, third sentence is being supported by some kind of source, by some kind of book. In this case, what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to avoid polemics. Why is the polemics so popular at this moment even in Moscow? Because polemics, you can approach the text from different kind of sides. That's your personal interpretation. But when you have this kind of presentation of a subject, you have to respond also based on sources. And it is extremely difficult to do it. Because then you're not going against me, but also you're going against the sources. Up to this moment, one of the articles actually was published almost 15 years ago. Up to this moment, I haven't had one response to the Moscow Patriarchate. Some personal observation, but no official response. Number three, and that's one of the latest articles, called The Canonical Territory, the Moscow Patriarchate, an analysis of contemporary Russian thought, Orthodox thought. This subject was written this article was written at the beginning of 2000, and it is very interesting because the entire theory of the canonical territory is based on three main components. Number one is the territorial component, number two, ethnic national, and number three, pastoral. At this present time, Moscow Patriarchate is saying that they have authority even in North America. Why? Because the members of the Orthodox Church in Russia are living in Canada, United States. And because they are living here, they have jurisdiction upon Canada, United States. Another support of the theory of the Russian civilization, how they can support themselves in order to be in this continent. Number four, this is actually great mention about it. Pussy Riot phenomenon shakes the ideological foundation of the elite of the Russian Orthodox Church. Maybe you heard about this about 4 years ago. Young girls, 20 maybe, they were dancing in the Cathedral of the Christ the Savior in Moscow. They had the masks. And there was a big uproar in Russia. They desecrated the entire temple. There was upheaval around the church. There was again consecration of the entire temple. And actually what happened, they were put into jail and sent to Siberia, to Gulag, for 3 years. My question was quite simple. How those 3 young girls, how could they shake the entire foundation of the Orthodox Church of Moscow Patriarchate? And they did. They did. So I'm trying to elaborate exactly what is the foundation, how is it possible? And one very interesting sentence, what they're saying, we are not against the church, but we are against the elite of the Russian Orthodox Church and what they are doing with the church in the political sphere. Young girls still are quite famous because there are people who are interceded for them all over the world. Number 5, Ecclesiology and National Identity in the Orthodox Thought. This article was written for the International Conference in Leeds, once again in the year 2000, and this conference was discussing the subject of the Orthodox Church in the contemporary Europe. Once again, how the nationality is being combined together with the church. Is it possible to combine or to put together nationality and the church? Is it possible or not? Because from one side, we are facing this aspect of so-called philitism, when nationalism is taking over the entire sphere of the religious life. And number 2, is nationalism possible in the life of the church? I'm saying yes, it is possible. And actually, it is a foundation. Which way? By being patriotic to the nation. Today we are Ukrainians. We are expressing praying to God in our national Ukrainian way. That's exactly patriotism. We have our songs, we have Veligadin, we have this dvor. And Pani Panko, Dr. Panko, actually, she's writing about this so much. Actually, she is the one who can say more about this subject than I do. But one thing I can assure you, that there's a possibility for us to be Ukrainians and Orthodox at the same time. Exactly what we are trying to do. Very interesting that there was a lot during the discussion. Remember, there were some members of the European Union came to this discussion because they wanted to hear exactly what they had to say regarding the situation in Serbia. This exactly was only a couple of weeks after the war. And actually they were quite surprised we didn't say anything at all. Why? Because once again, in order to talk about the subject, you have to be living in the subject. You have to be living in the church. You have to identify who you are in order to proceed. Number six, towards a ministerial balance in the Orthodox Church. And this article is quite interesting because I'm talking about, in this article, about certain functions in the church. We have to remember one thing. All of us are called the royal priesthood. If there is no amen from people, nothing happens in the church. If there's no axios during the ordination, everything stops. So there's an incredible importance for people to be present in the church. Not only that, but even bishops and priests and laity, we have specific functions. But all of us are creating one body of Christ. All of us. And one thing about bishops and priests, they should not be the elite. They should never be acting independently from the body of Christ. Because everything is being done in the church in the context of the body, of the unity. That's the reason why in this article I'm talking about the balance. There's supposed to be a balance between the clergy and laity. We're supposed to be living in harmony, in love, in peace towards each other. And one father of the church called St. Ignatius of Antioch in the 2nd century, he's using an example of a harp. He says, if this harp is tuned properly and you are playing, you are creating music. But it is not tuned properly, and there are some strings missing, you are not able to do anything at all. That's exactly using this way towards this life in the Orthodox Church. Number 7, the Ecclesiology of St. Ignatius of Antioch in the context of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of Canada. This was a presentation done for the college in 2004. And this presentation is quite interesting. I'm talking about exactly this presentation very shortly, briefly, about the points of agreement of our church with the particular of Constantinople. I'm talking exactly about the situation about our church in Canada. What is happening with our church exactly in the context of St. Ignatius of Antioch. Very brief presentation, 4 pages. Also, I encourage you to read it if you have time, please, as well. Now, the next chapter is quite also interesting, or the article, towards the future dialogue of the churches, Ukrainian Orthodox Catholic bilateral dialogue. In 2012, Metropolitan Yuri called me from Winnipeg. He said, "Okay, Father, I have to ask you something." Yes, what is that? We have a consultation of the bishops of the Ukrainian Catholic and Orthodox Church in Florida, Clearwater. And I want you to write a paper on this specific subject. So I did. Exactly, you are entering this kind of room like this one. You have almost 22 bishops from both sides. Exactly there I try to present to them how is it possible to reach the point of dialogue. Very interesting, even at this moment in Toronto. We have Panachide, we have Molevny, but somehow when it comes to the subject of discussion and dialoguing, we are not there. There's no one dialogue at this moment between the Ukrainian Orthodox and Catholic Church. Not one. There's dialogue, we are talking to each other only to the Roman Catholic Church, but not directly. And the question, why not? Why not? If we are praying, we have the same Molevny, Panachide, why not to talk to each other? And once again, there's a reason why. There's a reason why. But I won't tell exactly what it is. Please go into the subject and read. The only one food I will give you. In order to discuss, there's a point in our meeting when we have to look into each other's eyes. When you want to talk to the other person, you have to look straight ahead and to look into the other person's eyes in order to see who the other person is. But see what happened almost more than 400 years already. We are separated. We are calling ourselves the same nation. We have beautiful churches in Ukraine. We can meet even here, pray, but we don't know how to talk to each other, and it hurts. Today we have a father, who is the only father, but welcome father, and I'm sure you know what I mean. Hopefully we are going to pray something new in Toronto, but thanks for coming today. Number 9 is very interesting discussion also in subject and theme called the religious plurality and Christian self-understanding, general observations, critique, and points of engagement. We have to remember the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of Canada, we are a member of the Canadian Council of Churches. We are one of 24 of Christian churches in Canada. I am representing our church on the level of the governing board and also Interfaith Reference Group. There was a document issued by the World Council of Churches in 2008 regarding the plurality of faiths in the world. Exactly, we are discussing the subject on the faith of faith witness, and exactly this is my response on behalf of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church in Canada, what we think about this specific document. There's only one footnote also, I like to keep those footnotes to all of you. One observation about the Canadian Council of Churches. There could be discussion for the entire 2 days about specific subject, theological theme. At the very end, they will still turn to the Orthodox and they will ask, what do you think at the very end? They set a respect to the Orthodox churches in Canada. And we have to use it. At this present moment, based on the Faith and Witness Commission, at this moment, very strangely, we are the majority of the entire commission. But also, if we have tools to discuss and to go forward, let us do it. And we have the tools of Ukrainian Orthodox Church also to go forward. But 1 year ago, I also have a soft heart to our brothers and sisters of Orthodox Church of America. And there was a point exactly when we went from around this kind of round table and we were discussing the issue. So every church is supposed to say something about this issue. And when it came to my point, he jumped. And we went straight to the other one. Well, I don't like it very much. So what I did actually, I raised my hand and I was quite polite. Please do not do it anymore. Although I am a member of the Orthodox churches in Canada, I also have a voice on behalf of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of Canada. And nobody else, not Orthodox Church of America, nobody else will be talking on behalf of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church in Canada, nobody else, but also those who are supposed to represent. So that's the reason why we have to be there. Because why? If we won't be there, there will be some other denominations that will take our place immediately. And they will be talking only about one Orthodox Church in Canada. There's only one church. Disregarding the Ukrainians, Bulgarians, Greeks, whatever. We have to be there and talk about those issues. Number 10, Theology of Nature, Ecclesiological Paradigm for Ecology. This article was written for one of the conferences, actually it was in England as well. I couldn't go, but I sent my article. And exactly it's talking about the nature, about the disaster and about the climate in the world. And then in this article I'm proposing 3 elements or 3 solutions, paradigms to the problem. Number 1, and only mention about number 1, we have to recognize nature as the other. Patriarch Bartholomew actually is saying, if you destroy nature, it is a sin. Look what's happening right now around the world, how much we are destroying nature. There's some moments I'm thinking about my children. What kind of world are they going to inherit? Is there going to be snow up north? Maybe in 10 years we're going to disappear completely. So exactly, I'm talking about those issues in my next article. Number 11, an ecclesiological paradigm to the problem of terror and violence in the globalized world, an Orthodox contribution. Mainly I was talking about the subject in the context of 9/11 in the United States, and also the rise of Islam, radical Islam. It's a very interesting article, and just only one footnote as well. I sent this article for publication to Ireland or to England, and this article was not published. Why? Because only why? I used one sentence where I mentioned the subject of ETA. Yes, there was in Ireland there was a discussion. There was a group called ETA, and that was a group actually fighting with the Protestant and Roman Catholics. They are fighting with each other, and because I used this phrase or this organization, this article was not published, but was published somewhere else. So once again, please go into articles. I won't elaborate more, but you can go into this article and read. We'll appreciate that. And right now, 12, 13, and 14, 3 articles. I'm calling those articles a practical theology. Number 1, a cry for help, spiritual guidance for depression. In North America, 12% of all of the people will experience depression this way or the other way. So it means also in this hall, right now we have 50 people, 5 people of this hall are experiencing or will experience the subject of depression. It is so widespread, and also it is a sort of taboo in our families. There was a specific guy who wrote this article regarding one lady in Winnipeg. She was dealing with depression to the point of suffering tremendously. And there was a point when I visited her once in her room, and when I entered her room, I saw everything was dark. The room was dark. She didn't want to see the light. Exactly when I talked to her, I left her house and I wrote this article. What the Orthodox Church can offer for those who are suffering and who are really know the pain of being in depression. Hopefully this article on this subject will be one of our subjects for discussion in Oakville, only as a footnote as well. We created last month a group called the Task Force Group that will be discussing the subject of exactly depression, the subject of assisting dying, and also the subject of euthanasia. We have 6 professional individuals at this moment, and we will be tackling those subjects in the next months. It will open to the public, but once again, it's going to be quite interesting subject, because depression is one of the symptoms of people committing suicide. Number 13, From Fear to Trust, a theological discourse on theodicy. This article was written for the conference in Kiev in 2007, exactly on the subject of how do we understand fear in the context of theology of Baroque. It was a very interesting subject. How do we understand the subject of being afraid of God? Remember this phrase when the priest enters the church and he's during the liturgy says, "So strachom Bożym." What does it exactly mean? When he says those words, what exactly does it mean to be so strachom Bożym? Exactly this, I'm discussing the subject from this perspective. One last phrase of this article, I'm saying, strach Boży, це є довір'я. The fear of God is the trust in God. And I'm using an analogy of a small child. The small child does something wrong or breaks some kind of glass and looks at mom, and mom is really stressed out and almost screaming. But still this child goes to mom, embraces the legs, because the child still knows that mom loves him or her. That's exactly trust I'm talking about in my article. Even we are separating ourselves in our life from God by committing certain acts or by using sins, but still we know that God accepts us regardless of who we are. The last one, number 14, wounded by God's love, a journey of a soul after death, and the prayers of the deceased. Why did I include this subject in the article at the very end? It is actually the latest articles I wrote, and there's a specific reason why I wrote this article. Whenever we have a funeral, especially right now we're dealing with a lot of interesting funerals, that put this way. We have a lot of guests. Those people who are born and raised in our parish, we already know that really what's happening at this moment. But majority of our people who are coming for the funerals are not members of our church. And there was one case when I had a funeral about 3 years ago. I buried a lady. She was married to an Italian, and actually after the wedding, there's Trisna, and we went to an Italian restaurant. I was the only one. I didn't know anybody else. I was the only one in the clock. And exactly there was a commotion. Italian, they like to talk with it emotionally. So at the very end I said, well, I want to say a couple words. I want to talk about the life after death. You would see what kind of face I saw. As the hall was loud, everything stopped. Why? Because there's some kind of internal interest of every human being to know what is happening after of the soul after death. What is happening to the soul? Are we disappearing? Today you go to any kind of bookstore, you will notice actually there's certain shelves. People are writing about the tunnel, about the light of tunnel. But exactly what the church has to say about it. If you do not explain those things in a proper way, orderly way, young people will go somewhere else and they will find the answer. So that's exactly the reason why I wrote this article. And the consistory published it in the form of booklet. Actually, because that's the rest of the book that I have. I don't have any more. But the interest is very, very, very wide. Usually what I do in the parish, after the funeral, after the Trisna, I give 2 copies to the family. And do you know what's happening? Very, very interesting observation. When there's a funeral, family takes this copy of this booklet to home, and the one particular family, they are going to read it. If there was mom or dad, exactly they want to know what is happening with the soul of mom or dad. That's exactly general observation or general comments regarding my book. But at this moment, I have to say thank you to a lot of people. And allow me to say, before taking some questions, I want to say thank you to those who really helped me so much. I want to say thank you to the readers, translators, individuals who encouraged me to publish and also to research. It includes people in Winnipeg and here. You know who we are. Those words like you guys said, our own, is so inspiring, being honest. Because sometimes one sentence has such a tremendous impact. But to all those people who helped me, I'm simply saying thank you. To Sonia Holiat, exactly I was mentioned about oh, she's there. Thanks for coming. She is the one actually who helped me so much. Once again, I met her only once so far, but I met her through the internet, emails, and it was a quite correspondence. But she exactly what she did, she preserved once again the style of my writing. Pani Sonia, thank you from the bottom of my heart. But also there's one request. I hope we won't stop here. We will continue with your good words and also your dedication. We can do so much. Thank you so much for your help. And also regarding Pani Sonia Holiat, all the Pani Sonia Holiat, it was Pani Vida Mernik. She's not here today. Pani Vida Mernik actually who found her. Because I asked her to find me somebody in Toronto who is dealing with the subject. And she exactly found Pani Sonia. So once again to Pani Viramelik, thank you so much. Ukrainian Women Association, you can hear all of her. They sponsor the entire editing of the book. Pani Natalu, to the entire Soyuz. Thank you so much. Дякую, частина вашої праці. Частина вашої. Pani Carol Michaluk from St. Demetrius Parish on Lakeshore. She was the one who was dealing with the transportation. What's the deal? It is so easy for us to send something from Canada to Ukraine, but it's so difficult to bring anything from Ukraine to Canada. There's no airmail. So actually what I did finally, she found me the way to transport this book of the entire weight through Air France. So Pani Carol, thank you so much. Executive, St. Vladimir Executive, for continual support and financial support for this publication of this book. Well, once again, I'm really proud of this executive. We went through a lot, but thank you so much. When the parish is discussing certain issues and the parish is really going forward, we have to expand some challenges all the time. That's exactly what we are doing. And thank you once again to the entire executive. Pani Ola Adamec, Pani Slavka Shevchuk, you are here today. Thank you, because you know what you did. Thank you so much for helping, for bringing the sweets today, coffee. Thanks so much. Pani Larissa Badachny, you are the one really who made this possible. She was the one sitting at 1 o'clock in the morning and sending all the emails to all the people in Toronto. Pani Larissa, thank you. God bless you. Thanks for everything. And also your husband who is sitting on your side, because he is the one who is sleeping and you're the one working. I'm assuming because he's the morning person. Usually I get the message from him in the morning, but Pani Larissa work at night. Once again, Pani is St. Vladimir Institute actually for donating this hall and for allowing us to have this book launch. Pani Vihori, thank you. The more and more I know me, the more I see you more in a very professional way. Thanks, it's really nice. Thank you, God bless you. Thanks to all of you who came today, who made this possible for your contribution and also good words and encouragement. At the last point, I want to say thank you to my wife, my children. It was not once when actually I went to bed, it was really close to 3 o'clock in the morning. They were getting up, I was barely sleeping. But that's exactly those long nights when I was really researching or finding a place and time to write something. Thank you, God. And at the very end, thank you to God. That God what we're going to do anyway. Boże, дякуємо за все. Thank you so much. Maybe that's will be my first part of presentation. Thank you.